All right, supportable leagues, you know the drill by now. Week 3 recap. It was a wild week. Tons to talk about. Leagues shifted. NFL actually did some stuff. Pop culture came storming in. We had parents visiting. We had on location. Tons to talk about, but I'm going to cut myself short. Let's get right after it. So here's what happened in the NFL in week 3. Putting fantasy slightly on the sidelines, let's look at week 3 stories. And for this week, you can't get past Miami. Now, that is also a fantasy story because if you were playing someone who had someone from Miami, or most people from Miami, or had some on your bench in your lineup, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But 10 touchdowns. You get 35 and 35 even going. The numbers and the stats, if you care at all to take a look at it, they're through the roof. Having 4 touchdown players, having 3 if you include a quarterback, but 4 in terms of skill, or 2 in terms of skill players. Having somebody have effectively 80 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, 60 yards receiving, and being the second highest running back on their team. A-Chain coming out and literally getting maybe 1 fantasy point in the first 2 weeks, and now he's the RB5. He's the 5th highest scoring RB in most formats. Even more impressive, I just watching the score, it was reminded me of years ago in the World Cup when I think the Brazil-Germany game where all of a sudden it just started in one way and you just kind of saw it soaring and poor Brazil just couldn't get anything by. I even remember in high school back when Florida State was doing all the illegal stuff and everyone knew it, but we hadn't called them on it yet. They started off the college season against BYU, and I believe the announcer actually said as the kickoff was happening, well, this one's almost over. I've never seen that in the NFL before. 10 touchdowns. Making Sean Payton's return to Denver not look super great. Maybe he has to go back and film a new Netflix story. Kevin Smith probably is embarrassed to even be in a movie where he was supposed to be associated with him. Maybe the worst choice for a biopic since the octopus humping guy. I actually haven't seen that one. I'm assuming that's what it's about. Next up, pop culture and football coming together. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'll make some references to it later on. But obviously people know Taylor Swift was in the booth to watch Travis Kelce. She has to be the smartest marketer I've ever seen. Now, maybe they're in a relationship and this is true love, but she is tackling demographics like no one I've ever seen. I mean, she's already got a certain population of youth, and I think there's an age group where everyone below at least knows of her and probably follows her way more than people above. What didn't she have leading into this summer? Dads or parents. To hear the amount of stories of especially dads probably that were taking their kids to Taylor Swift concerts all summer long, the buzz was getting bigger. Now she's winning over football fans. If you've been on any social media platform, all we're hearing is apparently now Swifties care about football and they're going to somehow change or revolutionize doesn't matter. Jersey sales, I think Kelsey's number 2 now in the league. You can't match her enthusiasm, her business savvy. Absolutely killing it. But then to drop an F-bomb in front of Kelsey's mom, I don't even think a script could be as great as this. On to actual football stuff. For those of us who've been watching football for a while, it's not abnormal to have the NFL go a little bit crazy. Week 10, week 12, we start seeing some teams fall or overlook teams, and there's some upsets or huge blowouts or big scores. Week 3 is kind of new. I can't remember the last time it was this crazy this early, and we have so few undefeated teams left. But if we were in the 80s, we'd probably say something like NFL's on crack, but that's because it was. Now I'd say maybe NFL is just trying to explore itself and figure out who it is and maybe not be so pigeonholed to labels. But either way, if you were someone who had A-Chain on your bench, which is probably everybody who had A-Chain, now you got to look at every bench player as a maybe 70-pointer that's just waiting to bloom. So I don't think there's any bad starts or bad sits coming into week 4. So before we get to week 4, however, let's take a look at week 3 and our matchups. All right, as per usual, we're going to start with our leading scorer. And this week, it was close, but it was Raph and James taking the top spot. Also, knocking down a previously undefeated Kate in the largest margin. Now, Kate might be kicking her feet on this one because she may have noticed that she was actually our 4th highest scoring team, so there's tons of teams she would have beaten, but unfortunately, this was not one of them. You ran into a kind of a powder keg here. Still leaving points on the bench, but doing a little bit better with that one. Didn't leave quite so much. Don't know why they hate their number 1 pick. They just hate themselves so much. You were so confident, Raph, in the first round pick, and now you just keep keep Cousins in the cage. And actually, he was the quarterback 4 again. So I think it's the 3rd week in a row he's been a top 5 quarterback. I don't know what he has to do to prove to you. Of course, Herbert was number 2, and I think Hurts was number 6. So you're not long for quarterbacks. I think your biggest guy again, Keenan Allen, coming out of the cage. The dynamic duo between Herbert and Allen has paid off huge. I mean, 71 points would have almost taken me down just in 2 players alone. Throw in Walker, who had, if you were paying attention, did not have a great first half, but had a phenomenal second half to come on and help Seattle. Them alone were enough to get your standings, but then you throw in just kind of some over performances or some adequate performances in St. Brown and Cook and everything, and you were flying. You didn't get the first time you put Nakua in, he didn't go off for you, and certainly Metcalf might have been a better option, but let's not be picky. Okay, anytime you're going to score over 170, I think you're fine. Kate, it is your first loss, but again, that's 2-1 is still going to put you in a good standing. As you can see, you're still doing quite fine. Your quarterbacks though were huge. They were not the reason that you went down. And remember, you still did have a great week. Your tight end's doing fine. Your flex is great in Connor. It's really just your running backs. Jacobs and Hall are not performing as they should, and that's kind of kicking you. Dallas's defense has been carrying you along, and unfortunately, as I mentioned, I think in the NFL recap, they did not hold their part this week. Didn't leave a lot on the bench, so you made most of the good starts. Evans would have been okay, but you get, like I said, receivers were not necessarily a concern. And Lamb was supposed to go off against an Arizona team that wasn't supposed to be able to guard them, but sounds like I got a case of the supposed is because it didn't really happen so well. Either way, great matchup. 2 high-scoring teams. Raf and James, you're on a roll now. That's a 2-game winning streak. You see here, you've climbed to 2nd, so you are the highest scoring of all the 2-1 teams, which is why you currently would hold the tiebreaker. But Kate, don't worry. I'm sure you can bounce back next week. But ultimately, congrats to Raf and James. What a bounce back by Paul. Goes from our lowest scoring up against our top seeded Pamela and comes out with just barely the 2nd highest scoring team. He only missed by a couple points. Massive bounce back week from almost everyone who disappointed him. His running backs, who gave him nothing last week, did fantastic, almost a combined 30 points. Finally, Chase looks like he was worth the pursuit after all, coming through and actually having a big Monday night, which was huge for you. Diggs has been good for you all year. Your quarterbacks, I mean, Smith wasn't great, but Tua is the 70-point onslaught. It's never a bad outing when you get your 4 touchdowns in. And Devontae Adams finding a way to score, even though their team was barely doing it. If you can get over 100, it's great, let alone 172 receiving yards. Not so shabby. Philly's defense certainly helped you out as well, Paul. Now you are still dealing with injuries. Maybe you just shouldn't take anyone from the Chargers. Eckler still out. Keep an eye on him. Not sure about next week, but it looks like Mike Williams is out for the year. It looks like we have another injury that just kind of takes someone out of the equation. However, as I said, with you having 3 of the top receivers this week, Adams actually being the 2nd receiver, and while Chase and Diggs weren't necessarily in the top 5, they were definitely in the top 10, so it's not a position you are wanting for, but could affect your depth as bye weeks come up. In terms of Pamela, tough luck, first loss. You did put up a fight. 151 is nothing to sneeze at. That's going to win most of the time. You just happened to go against a juggernaut this week, so I wouldn't panic too much. Your receivers are still crushing it. Hill had a monster game, and realistically, if it was closer, he probably would have had a better game. They just started putting other people in because apparently once you're up by 50, why do you care? Lawrence is still underperforming for you a little bit, but you can keep the hope. He's supposed to he's supposed to be much more prolific as a passer. So let's see if that works out. You were the only one who took a kicker that was actually in our top 5. So all the other kickers, which we will definitely get to in the next matchup, were not taken. Okay, so there's 4 high-scoring kickers in free agency. Buffalo's was only 4th, but 15 points from your kicker. I'll take that any single time. Swift is looking to be a huge addition for you as well. The bench, like I mentioned last week, you're still kind of in some injury problems here. You did figure out the IR spot. There might be a second one. You might want to take a look at that because if there's people out, you can kind of benefit. Although some of these people should, in theory, be starting to get you some points, but let's see how that works. Either way, family, you had our number 1 for only a couple weeks there. Doesn't mean you can't climb back. You're certainly here, so looking at 3rd and 4th, 2 high-scoring teams. But ultimately, Paul, congrats on the comeback. All right, I called it the Battle of the Basement, but it was just the epic battle of the week. Anytime it's within a point, you're going to be second-guessing yourself. You're going to be looking over your shoulder. You're going to be worried about how it banks out. Every pick maybe made something, but I think you know where I'm going to talk about for Kelsey and Frankie. Controversially, adding another quarterback just in case Burrow didn't play. At least I'm assuming what they did. The sad part was, had they started any other quarterback or had they started any kicker in the league, they may have beaten Jules. But Jules was not to be denied. She was tired of the offer. Put together just enough to get through. McCaffrey and your running backs have been great as per usual. You didn't tinker too much. I think maybe if you look at the other side, sometimes you can futz with things just a bit too much and outthink yourself. You avoided doing so. Now, TJ Hawkinson let you down. This is the first week that he was not one of the top 5 tight ends, but he still did just fine. Unlike the other tight end who, after a first week off, Kelsey, for the second week in a row, found some blank space in the end zone and was able to score his second touchdown of the year. But that's the first time I think you've lost the tight end battle all year long. Ultimately, we can go through player by player, and I can tell you who was higher and who was lower. Your wide receivers did great. You did enough in running back, so your skill positions are there. And ultimately, you held strong. A win is a win, whether it's by 20 points, 80 points, or what is this, 0.8 points. So congratulations, Jules. You're out of the 0 for column. You're into the winning side, and hopefully you have momentum for next week. Kelsey, Frankie, honestly, I wish you the best of luck going forward. We don't want to see too many offers. We'll get to one more in a second, so I can't point my finger too hard. But this is going to happen. You're trying so hard. It'll work out. Just deep breath and look on to week 4. I mentioned an offer. This is embarrassing. You run this thing. You put all this effort into videos, and what? You come out of it looking like a chump. I'm not in last place because I have scored some points along the way. Not taking a shot at the 8th place. I mean, I might be there next week, but ultimately, I just have to say this: just don't play Jackie, because somehow, even though I was projected, even though I looked and Love came through and Allen came through, all of a sudden, player by player by player, underperforming. Jackie doesn't do that much, but she does just enough to win. All right, pretty much for her. Quarterback, kicker, defense, and then A.J. Brown. That's all she needed to take me down. But ultimately, it's her mind meld defense. It's somehow she convinces everyone on your team to underperform. This is now 3 for 3 that Jackie has produced our drink buyers. So this, add me to the list. I'll send it on the group chat. I owe for week 3. It will be a couple weeks because some travel is upcoming, but trust me, I'm good for it. Congrats, Jackie. You are now our top seed. You are only 3-0. I think you are our second lowest scoring team of the year so far. But obviously that doesn't matter. So when we get to the next little part and I expose who might be the next to buy drinks, let's see who runs up against Jackie, the Widowmaker, the drink creator. Congratulations. Okay, as mentioned, we go from week 3 to week 4. So if Jackie's Widowmaker streak continues, Kate, get ready to buy some drinks, although it does look like this could be tight. Again, I say this every week, but I know people haven't changed their rosters, so let's not assume that this is how it's going to roll. We do have some very interesting inter-house matchups. Let's not leave fantasy football to cause any actual real tension. Jackie and I took it pretty well, although she did a victory dance in front of me this morning that I was not super comfortable with. And now I have her parents here to remind me that it wasn't an awesome morning. But trust me, people, you can get through this. Your relationships are strong enough. We got Jules against Paul in an epic matchup here. Jules has got the momentum of her first win. She's tasted victory. Let's see if she can keep the ball rolling. Paul has his extremes. He's been high and low. So let's see how he balances out for week 4. And we've got my Ofer brethren. Pamela, Frankie, I'm cheering for you. I want everyone to get a win. And you're going against, within the household, you're going against our top score from week 3, sorry. So best of luck to you. Pam, it looks like it's me and you. You're a formidable opponent. You've scored each week, so I don't think I'm going to get away with my predictions. I think to beat you, I'm going to have to go well over. As I think I mentioned last week, I'm going to be doing my best to keep getting these out, whether I'm editing them on planes and posting them from varying cities. In fact, I do believe next week's recap will be recorded in Chiang Mai. So let's see how that goes. Till then, good luck on the waiver wire. Do remember, this is a key point. So Thursday night game, it's a big one. We got Detroit and Green Bay. A lot of people have players for both those teams. Sunday, check a little bit earlier. We're going to the UK. So for 2 weeks in a row, if you have Jacksonville, they're going to make the flight. Other teams will come and join them. But for the next couple of weeks, there will be a European game. It starts a few hours before every other game. So just bear in mind, the rosters aren't locked then, but those games will be. Treat it like a Thursday nighter. Best of luck, everybody. Hopefully we get some drinks in the next week so people can start meeting up. But until then, I'll see you in week 4.